Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Now, I am tickled pink to see that some of you are already full of vim and vigor, ready to go. You've got your notepads and your pens handy. For those of you who do not, please grab those now because I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you will jot down some notes. You will jot down some sort of action item that you can implement in your business today. Remember, that's what this is all about, implementation to drive your business forward. Today, we're going to be talking about sales and marketing, or I prefer to say marketing and sales. This is a huge topic. This is one that I've sort of been reticent to cover because it is so encompassing. It's not terribly complex. It's not like the ideas involved are hard to wrap your mind around. Instead, it's just that it's so comprehensive. There's so much involved that I wasn't exactly sure how to organize it and give it to you in sort of bite sizes. So we're probably going to, as I mentioned before, as promised before, create a playlist and break this into multiple parts. And that way you can spend some time on one concept at a time and wrapping your head around that and brainstorming ideas, taking those notes and implementing things and improvements in your business regarding sales and marketing, or remember, marketing and sales. Now let's go back to that for just a second. Why do I say I prefer to reference it as marketing and sales? In fact, most times you've ever heard those two paired together, they've been in the opposite order. It's sales and marketing. What department do you work in? I work in sales and marketing. It's an industry. And we're going to look today a little bit at what is the difference. Is there a difference between sales and marketing? And if so, what are the differences? What are the similarities? We'll look at that. The reason I say I like to frame it from the other way, marketing and sales, and it's not that big a deal, it doesn't matter. It's just to help to remind you that marketing most times is the predecessor of sales. And as we get into these definitions and looking at the similarities, comparing and contrasting the two terms, you'll see there's more similarities than there are differences, but marketing comes first. I would say it can be a bit of a chicken and an egg situation, but let's not over complicate this. And let's start with that. Okay, now going back to basics, you should already know that before you want to get into sales or marketing, you need to have a unique value proposition. And we've done videos on that, and you don't have to stop right now to go visit those, but you're going to want to take some time to visit our videos on unique selling proposition, unique value proposition. Everything you can absorb, all that material we've created on value and the four constituents of value are very important to understand, because now when we get to sales and marketing, which is all about communication, in fact, that's how I define marketing. It's communicating your unique value proposition to your target market. You are somehow going to communicate to your prospective customers why they should do business with you. Why? Because you have exceptional value. You have unique value in the marketplace, and of the choices that are available to them to spend their hard-earned money, yours represents a very good choice. And that comes by first understanding where the value is, and then it comes down to the communication. That's what marketing is. So when we look at this, let's talk again a little bit about what are the differences and what are the similarities between sales and marketing, and then think of this all along, and your homework as we go along, and you can pause the video at any time to take those notes, is to always frame this in the context of your business and what are you doing day to day. What strategy and plan do you have in place to make sure that you are communicating your value proposition? What are you doing to take advantage of all the concepts that we discussed today? I should mention to you that I will use some charts, some visual images that are meant to, or infographics that are meant to help communicate the idea, and I will make those available to you. Don't worry about jotting down everything you see on the screen. Of course, you can revisit this video as often as you like to refresh your memory, but I will actually put those images in a download. We'll have a link in the description and you can download that. You just enter your name and email address and you'll have a PNG or a JPEG image of the things that I referenced today. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's probably better for you to see a visual depiction of the concepts we discussed than just listening to me ramble on and on about it. And I'll elaborate, of course, on those images on the screen. Now, we've already said that marketing is communicating, that my definition of marketing is communicating your value proposition to your customers. Well, that's the first similarity between sales and marketing, because both of them, whether it's a sales strategy, a salesperson, or a marketing strategy, a marketing channel, a marketing image, a marketing asset of any kind, it's both of those, that's the first similarity, are designed to communicate your value to your customer. And of course, I just said customer, but at this point, they aren't necessarily customers. They may be. You may be communicating to existing customers in the hopes of getting repeat business and expanding the engagement that you have with those customers, but we're communicating also and often to our target market, our prospective customers, or what we would say are leads, or hope to convert them to leads. The second similarity between marketing and sales is both are intended to introduce prospective customers into and lead them through the customer sales journey or the sales funnel. Now, I've done another video on what we refer to as the customer sales journey. I want to differentiate just slightly today because there's a more general sales funnel or customer journey that is based around what the common sort of psychology of commerce is, people's behavior as they engage in purchasing behavior. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what I'll bring up on the screen and we'll go through in more detail. The other video that I did on the customer sales journey was more about your documentation of the ideal sales journey as it relates to your business and what path you would like people to go through ideally as you convert them from a target market and awareness into a lead, and then from a lead into an actual sold customer, and you generate revenue. So, I mean, it's a fine distinction, but what we talked about before, even though there's a lot of overlap, is not the exact same thing. Today, I'm going to talk about more the general, as I say, psychology of commerce and the path that most people go through if we break it into more general steps. And then it's really important for you to understand that as you're creating and documenting your specific and ideal customer sales journey as it relates to your product or service. So when you understand the psychology and what people are typically going to do, the phases or the stages that they go through from, you know, original awareness all the way down through the sale, then you can specify what conversion points you want to have as you document your own. So visit that video separately and understand the difference. So let's bring up on the screen visual depiction of this concept of the customer journey or the sales funnel and look a little bit closer at it. So once again, the sales funnel or customer journey is a roadmap that defines the path prospective customers or leads, and they actually begin as not leads. We've got to convert them to leads. So we'll say our target market, our prospective customers typically take and the stages they encounter en route to finalizing purchase decisions to engage businesses through the acquisition of products or services. So there's the definition I would want you to think of as we go through this. And as you look at the left side of this image, you can see sort of that's definition is represented here. So you have an overall market. That's everyone that could potentially ever be a customer. And what we're trying to do, or what we will see done, is that market then gets narrowed down through the funnel into the target market, those people who are ideal. And we're going to talk a little bit more about target market for you. And then from your target market, we want to convert them into leads. And we've said in that other video that converting someone from your target market to a lead simply involves gathering contact information. By definition, if you can't contact them, they're not really a lead, with the exception being that if there's an incoming inquiry from a customer, they're a lead until they choose to exit the sales process or the sales funnel at which point, if you did not gather any sort of contact information, you can't get back in touch with them. They're no longer a lead. They are a lost lead. And then, of course, we want to convert all leads through the funnel and through your customer journey that you've defined into customers, which is defined as having, executed a sale and you have generated revenue. Customer journey starts with awareness of consumer needs or wants. Your customers are desiring to solve a problem or evoke a feeling. That feeling may be happiness, confidence, security, righteousness, etc. So it all begins at the top here with awareness. Therefore, your marketing strategy should begin with being empathic and anticipatory of customer needs and often their objections. You might want to try to anticipate their objections in advance for your marketing messages and their emotions. Remember, people buy very much based on emotion, and it's not all about logic. So as you're thinking about this in the context of marketing, which is what we're talking about, you got to be empathic, you've got to be anticipatory. And remember the axiom that people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And remember the other axiom, which is that the number one thing preventing people from buying is fear of making a mistake. And when we talk about the psychology of people entering a sales funnel, they do so just organically, naturally, in an effort to try to pacify this need. They're trying to avoid they're making a mistake. So that's where the whole sales funnel becomes all about research and everything to pacify that fear. Think of the research that customers typically do as having that primary objective. And when you think in those terms, then your primary objective is to assist them with this, to help them through communicating your marketing message and pacifying that fear of making a mistake. And let's look again at the funnel and see what customers would typically do. You can probably picture yourself often as you, and I really recommend that, always look, if we're trying to be empathic to a customer's situation or the plight they're in and deciding where they're going to spend their hard-earned money, put yourself in those shoes and think to the last time you had to make a purchase decision and you became aware of that need. And remember what those needs are. Again, I want to reiterate that the needs are to solve a problem or to evoke a particular emotion. And sometimes we buy things to simply evoke an emotion of, like we said, happiness, contentedness, maybe superiority or righteousness or something like that. And think back to the last time you spent money with a business or even a charity or something like that, and how did you make the decision? So it began with your awareness that you wanted to fulfill that need, and then you started your research to pacify that fear that you have of making a mistake. So these days, where does it start at the top there? Most often a search engine query. So you will do an inquiry through Google or Bing, whatever you happen to use, and you have a keyword search. And then what will happen is, as we go down and people are doing their research, they will consult trusted sources. Now that can be family, it could be the pundits that they find online, that kind of thing. But consulting trusted sources is sort of the next thing we typically do before we make a purchase decision. And then as we continue to go down, maybe the search end query led us to an original equipment manufacturer's site. So sort of maybe some of you are retailing products that are built by a different manufacturer. So, if you run an appliance business, for example, the person may go to LG's website or Panasonic's website or GE or one of the big manufacturers of the appliance. They go and they're researching there first before they're actually going to you as the purveyor website. Now, this part where I said they consult trusted sources, and I said they may consult family and that kind of stuff, but often what they'll do is they'll trust or they'll consult a trusted source such as Consumer Reports or some reviews. They're looking at one of these websites, like I said, the pundits, the experts who are rating things, and they're narrowing their search. This is that research that helps them to narrow their query and become more and more convinced. With more research, the extent to which they research, the more their fears are pacified about making a mistake. And then they get down to maybe a purveyor site. So they've decided, okay, I think I've narrowed it down to a handful of choices, and I'm going to check in my local market what are good things. Now that's maybe where they become aware of your product or service. They maybe at this point for the first time, or maybe further up here, maybe they were referred to your source when they looked at reviews, and maybe there was some advertising up here, or they became aware of you. At some point they visit your site, and that's where you're really trying to let them know that your product or service is unique and is the best option for them. And then once they're on your site, typically the search will be further refined by going down to a details page. So now they've discovered, okay, you have the product or the service that they're looking for, and then they go in and they dive deeper into the details of the product or service on a specific page. And at that point, they're probably looking for availability information, pricing information, and what are the features and benefits. Why would they deal with you versus others? They may again be wanting to pacify some of that fear still about why would I deal with you versus someone else. So they're looking at things like your ratings, your reviews, testimonials from your customers. And then depending on the type of business you have, maybe they add to cart, and then they make a payment, and then it results in a sale. And you can see here that it shows this whole section from awareness, sort of search engine query, all the way down through adding to cart, and even into the payment is research, because perhaps just before payment they need to make sure that they know their pricing. So all of these stages are about research, but the stages of consulting the trusted sources down through the detailed page are about refining their search, because they may have several different products that they're considering, several different products or services that may evoke this feeling or solve this need that they have, but they're refining that. That's why it's considered a funnel. It's about eliminating choices along the way. And then intent maybe doesn't even start until after the trusted sources thing. Back where you have awareness and doing original Google search and consulting trusted sources, you can think of yourself once again as a prospective customer, where you may have engaged in those things only to go, yeah, no, and you sort of, you kill the idea. You're like, okay, well, I did enough research to know that this isn't really for me. And you haven't even gone into the intent phase. Once you start to go onto specific product websites and the purveyors of those products or services and drill down into the details, that's what we would consider intent. And then over here, you'll notice that we would consider each of these a conversion, advancing steps along the customer journey down the sales funnel is what we mean when we talk about conversions. It's important to understand that customers don't just, enter the sales funnel, the customer journey, and they go to a sale every time. That's obvious. And of course, when you think of yourself, when you're buying, you can exit at any time. You can exit the customer journey. You can exit the sales funnel, and you may never return to it. You may have determined that it's not right for you, or you can come back. So I just got a visual depiction here of what this looks like. And as it says, leads may exit and re-enter any step along the journey or funnel. The exit reasons are timing. You've decided, well, it's just not the right timing for me right now. Or you've cooled off. So in the time that you were doing your research, maybe you even got into intent and everything, and you got interrupted or whatever happens, and you cooled off. You were no longer excited about that. And we've all made emotional purchases that were very much based on timing, or maybe it's seasonal, the purchase. It could be a fashion purchase, and it's like, okay, well, I no longer need shorts, the weather's cooling off. Or it could be a snowblower you were looking at, and now it's spring has hit and the timing is no longer good, and you cool off as a result of that. Fear. The fear, remember, the number one thing that prevents people from making a purchase decision is fear, and that's the reason that they exit the sales funnel. If the fear is not pacified, then they will exit. They're unconvinced that your product or service is going to actually solve the need or evoke that feeling that they want. Or they're convinced that it will not do that. It's sort of saying the same thing two different ways, but the key is, this is in marketing, it's your job to convince people that your product or service has the value, and it will in fact solve the problem that they have, or evoke the feeling that they are trying to gain. And then the last one there is budget. Now remember, your job in sales and marketing is to raise the value of your product or service to exceed the price that you're charging. And to remember, people will engage naturally in commerce only in commensurate value exchange when their perception of what they're getting exceeds that which they're giving away. So what they're giving away typically is currency, so they're going to give you some a particular price of currency for your product or service. And so your job in marketing is to raise the value to exceed the currency that you're expecting in exchange. And that's the first part of budget. So people may exit the customer journey, the sales funnel, because of budget. They may think, well, you've been unsuccessful in doing that. They're like, it's too expensive. But not only that, sometimes you've done a great job and they'd really want your product, and it comes down to affordability. They just may not be able to afford it, and they may never be able to afford it, or they may not be able to afford it right now. So the budgetary issue may not be that you failed to communicate sufficient value. It may in fact be that they really love it, they think it's very valuable, and it's worth every penny, but they just don't have the money right now. And then it sort of is a timing issue. And so that's why we recognize that people can leave at any conversion point, but they can also re-enter. And that's what we talk about when we say nurturing. So we want to have that contact information of our prospective customers, so that when they do exit the sales journey, when they do exit our process at some point along the path, and they haven't purchased, then we want to nurture those leads in hopes of getting them to re-enter. And they can re-enter at any point. They may have been further down, they may have added to cart, and just prior to payment they bounced and they abandoned their cart. It's called an abandoned cart. And you may hope through nurturing to get them back to that cart. You may have received email from particular e-commerce websites that were like, we noticed that you abandon your cart. If you proceed to payment at this point, there's an extra 10% off coupon, these types of strategies. But what can happen is customers over time, they may cool off, and if they don't re-enter the sales process, they may revert further back upstream, and it's back to maybe their consulting trusted sources again. And so nurturing can be effective in reintroducing leads into the journey or funnel. And what you're trying to accomplish with your nurturing is maintaining awareness. You want to have people not forget about the idea that they did have a problem that your product or service can solve. And nurturing can be effective when the timing is better. So your nurturing is that you're top of mind when they realize that, yeah, you know what, the timing's much better. Now I've saved up some money, or I'm not distracted with these other things that are more pressing on my plate right now. So the timing's better, and your nurturing, your marketing messages are timely in that regard. Or you can renew excitement. In some way, your marketing and your nurturing efforts are trying to renew the excitement, that what got them excited in the first place. And we're looking at this, maybe you have some news, maybe your product's improved, or there may be something in the industry that's happened that you communicate to them, or it might be just in the general market. And rates are lower, and you're selling real estate, and you can talk to them about where their mortgage payment would be lower. All these types of things are done through marketing nurturing messages. Again, in your nurturing, you want to do the same thing. You want to try to pacify fears. So what you're doing, remember we said before that you are anticipating objections. You almost have to be a bit of a mind reader. We talked about marketing being a lot of art, and we want to try to make it as scientific as possible, but there's a lot of art and trial and error involved. And so you're anticipating their objections. You're trying to get inside their mind. That's why we said you got to be empathic and think about what is it that made them exit in the first place. So your nurturing messages, which are part of your marketing strategy, are also going to try to pacify fears and ultimately reinforce value, which it always comes down to, right back to value, value, value. Now, we started off this conversation by comparing and contrasting sales and marketing. And I want you to note, as we're looking at this image here and we're talking about, I've been really focused on marketing, but you can see that really what we've been covering so far are about the similarities. Remember, we said that both sales and marketing are meant to create awareness of a particular need that a customer has. And they're also both designed to introduce and advance or guide people along, prospective customers along the sales journey and the funnel. And you can see that that's the case, that whether you're talking about a very active sales process or marketing, a more passive marketing message, that they both can do that. Anywhere along here, they can do that. Now, when I talked about nurturing, I was really referring to that more as marketing, but a salesperson, the sales strategy can also be very nurturing, and that follow-up call to somebody who exited the sales process, who maybe left the showroom without buying, or what have you. You are having a salesperson that is actually involved in doing the nurturing. These days, it becomes more and more available and realistic and plausible to do through a more passive marketing message. And it's very cost effective to do it that way, very efficient as well. But certainly the compare and contrast discussion up to this point, that they've both been, sales and marketing can do all of these things. Then what is the difference? What is the difference between sales and marketing? Since it's all communication and you're trying to guide people from awareness to sale, I like to think of the definition of sales as being the last conversions, the very last steps of the conversion. Of course, sales can be further upstream and everything, but where you're really important, that's why I say it may come across as a chicken and an egg thing, but I say that marketing precedes sales, because creating that awareness and providing messages and communication tools, especially with a solid web presence, to be able to help people along the way, along the journey with their research and pacifying those fears, then it becomes up to sales. Depending on your industry, depending on your business, it may be the salesperson. The sales, the definition, are creating that last few conversion, especially to revenue. So we think of this as perhaps now you get an incoming inquiry. Now this comes back to that other video where we talk about you creating your very specific customer journey, not the more general psychology of commerce in general, but you're coming up with your specific trail to a sale, your actual path that you want customers to follow for your sales process. And then sales becomes those last conversions where you're thinking of specific steps and phases that you've set up. Now, I've several times mentioned sales representatives, sales people, but you can also have customer service agents who don't think of themselves as being in sales, but personnel involved in assisting people through those last couple of steps to conversion. You can have sales tools such as chatbots and pricing calculators and various things on your website, which I would say is part of the sales process. So sales is all part of marketing, and hopefully this isn't confusing. I'm going to bring up another, not today, in a successive session, and another part of this playlist, I'll bring up another visual depiction that may help to differentiate between sales and marketing. It's not that important to really differentiate these things, but when we talk about sales and marketing, I find that these definitions are useful for me when I'm trying to problem solve and I'm thinking about what do we need to do to drive more sales. Is it our marketing messages? Is it our more passive things? Or is it the last couple of phases? And this is a good point at this time to bring up the real key from taking marketing from being an art to a science. It's the same with sales. You could say the exact same thing with sales, is that great salesmanship is an art. I would agree with that, but we want to make it more scientific by doing what? by measuring. It took me this long into the video to mention measuring. You know, that which is measured improves. So that's why you want to measure all of these things. Along that funnel, we talked about all those conversions you want to measure so that you can identify where are people typically exiting. And that will give you some clues that you can use to strengthen your position and along this way and keep people engaged. And that's where you can decide, okay, do we need to have a good nurturing? Is our nurturing fine? We're getting people reintroduced, and where are they? You know, that anticipating and the being empathic about people, it all comes back down to measurement so that you know and you can be more quantitative in terms of figuring out what you need to do. You may, for example, conclude that your marketing is great. Your marketing and those people, those individuals, those stakeholders within your business who are responsible for more passively communicating your brand and your marketing messages to your customers, that they're doing a good job through that quantifying, through that operationalizing and measurement. You find, well, no, we're doing a good job, but what people are then exiting in those last few conversion steps, and that's your sales process. So maybe do we need to do more training with our people? Do we need to strengthen what it is that they do? They may be doing demonstrations and presentations, their negotiation skills. What about our quotes? When people are, see, these are all about that last few phases there in their negotiation. Do we need to help them with negotiation? Of course, I've got videos on a lot of these topics, so visit those if you've already ascertained. If on your notes today you're like, you know what, I do think our marketing's pretty strong, but in fact our sales are a little weak on negotiation, then visit our video on negotiation and so forth. But it really comes down to those last few phases, and by measuring, you'll know where it is that you need to strengthen. Is it your closing skills for your people and so on? But we've been at this now for a little over half an hour, and I think that's where I want to leave it today. The next series, the next video in this series, we'll be talking more about branding and tactical advertising and the differences, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. And then after that, in another series, we'll look at the various forms of marketing and all the different channels. As I say, it's so comprehensive. There's so much to talk about. We would never run out of material, but in the interest of time, I think I want to leave it at that today. I hope you got something out of this, and I really hope you made that commitment to yourself and you jotted down some note. Now go and implement that, whatever that was. And remember that I would really encourage you to leave a comment, because if you leave a comment, whether you agree with something, if you point out something that I need to clarify in greater detail, or you give some pushback because you just disagree, you know my attitude is dissension is really good. And when you leave a comment like that, someone else in the community reads your comment and we learn from that, and we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.